Am I good to go? Alright. Hi, I'm Reed Butler, and for my 20% project, I chose to research into CTE. Wait. Alright. So why I chose this topic. The first reason was because of the sports I played. So, over the 6 years I've played football, I've seen a lot of people get concussions, and even though thankfully I myself have never suffered one, I've seen people really struggle when they've gotten them. But when people have gotten these concussions, I'm not so much worried about what was happening to them when they had it, but what would happen after, if there were any ramifications to this. Another reason for why I chose this topic was because of the sports I watched. I am an avid fan of the NFL, and especially the New England Patriots, as I imagine some of you else in the room are, and I've been hearing more and more about CTE in the NFL, and I've been wondering what it really was, and I wanted to learn what it was, and especially with Aaron Hernandez. So we all heard what had happened to him and how he had suffered it, but I had heard he had the worst case of CTE people had ever observed, and I wanted to know how it brought him down to where he became and how he ended up getting to where he was. And my goal for this project is to inform others. This is my one true goal because I see this as the single best way to prevent CTE. So, what is CTE? CTE stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and it is a progressive and degenerative disease. And it results in repeated head trauma. So what this means is when, let's say you're running, your brain is in your head and it'll be floating something of a liquid. So if you are stopped very quickly, via a hit in football, your brain will continue to move for a second until it hits the front of your skull, and then it'll bounce back into the back of your head. This can result in a concussion, or it can be a minor hit, but regardless, this often releases something called the tau protein. And the tau protein results in diseases called tauopathy diseases, and CTE is one of them, along with, I believe, Alzheimer's and dementia are similar to it. So these are three important events in the discovery of CTE. The first of these three events was in the 1920s, when Harrison Martland observed something in boxers. He could see something was wrong with them, but as the technology wasn't there at that point in time, he could only see what was being shown to the outside world, so he described them as goofy. And the importance of this is not so much he truly figured out what CTE was, but it provided a building block for where CTE research could build up from, and it just shows a starting point for where it came from. The second event in the research is in the 1930s, yet again with boxers, and this time researchers were able to discover neurological and behavioral issues. And the importance of this is, like in the 1920s, it doesn't show what was truly happening in the brain. They weren't looking into that quite yet. But this shows a progression from where it came just a decade before, as previously they'd been described as goofy, but now they're being described as having behavioral issues, which is a legitimate side effect of CTE. So it shows continued progression in the research of it. The next event I chose was in the 1990s. So in between the 1930s and the 1990s, obviously an extensive amount of research took place. But I chose this event with autistic women in the 1990s because it shows most of the research in between the 1930s and 90s was regarding sports. And that's what most people associate with CTE. But our brains are no more suited to take a hit as they are in sports as they would be with autistic women who had a tendency to bang their heads. And the importance of this is our brains and our body in general are just not suited to be able to take a hit like this, and it can wreak havoc. So Bennett Omalu is more of an important figure than he was an event in the history of discovery of CTE, and he brought CTE into the spotlight recently when he did the autopsy on Mike Webster. Mike Webster was a professional football player in the National Football League, and he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers and would later be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And he died as a result of CTE. And Amlau did the autopsy and could see this in his brain. But when he tried to bring this information out to the public, the NFL tried to bring back last year, and they tried to cover it up because they wanted their players to seem as though they were invincible, to bring in the crowds, to bring in the money. And if it was shown that players were dying just because of playing the sport, it would look really bad. But eventually his information did get out, and a movie was recently made within the past 2 years, I believe, called Concussion. So, the main causes for CTE. Sports is the one I've talked about the most, and I believe is often associated with the disease, but military can also be one of the causes, as, for example, if an explosion, let's say, would go on nearby, the force of this could cause a similar effect to a hit to the brain. And as I said, it's a progressive disease, so it will worsen over time, and it comes as a result of sudden brain movement or trauma. So the initial hit, people often think it has to be a concussion to release a tau protein, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be a hit of any severity. And this hit just results in the brain hitting the skull and therefore releasing this tau. And as I said, the hits can be extremely bad to not that bad, but eventually will lead to this. So the long-term effects. Side effects that have been observed from CTE are behavioral changes, as it was shown in the 1930s with the boxers. And what behavioral changes could result are paranoia, anxiety, memory loss, or suicidal thinking like Aaron Hernandez did when he eventually killed himself in this jail cell. And it also results in a loss of motor skills, which can be really tough on the people who will suffer from this. And these side effects have been often brought into a similar light of dementia, as they are both tauopathy diseases. So this is more the biological part of the project. So the tau protein, which causes CTE, its normal function is as a microtubule stabilizer. So a microtubule is part of a eukaryotic cell, and it transports materials throughout the cell. And this tau will rely on something called an axon, which is shown right there in the graph, and that is part of a neuron. And the tau protein is harmless when attached, and it is abundant throughout the brain, but when it is, it can result in tauopathy diseases. So this tau protein, as it lies on the axon is a very vulnerable part of the neuron, so when a hit occurs, the tau is often released from it, and when this happens, it will form clumps with other tau. This tau can be released from the same hit, a previous hit, or a later hit, and they will eventually create something often referred to as a tau tangle, and these will float around the brain until they eventually settle on a synapsis. So a synapsis is key to like a neuron. It's very important for how the brain communicates with the rest of the body, and when it does this, it will lock onto the vesicle, which is how neurons communicate with one another, and it inhibits something called synaptic transmission. This is where CTE this is how it causes its side effects. Synaptic transmission is really how the body is able to communicate messages throughout it. So it doesn't completely inhibit it, but it causes a lack in efficiency, which is really bad, as you need your brain functioning to its fullest ability to communicate with your body, so you have your motor skills, and also, as previously said, it causes behavioral issues as well. So, prevention methods that are existing for CTE. Helmets is often the one people would first think of, and helmets are in like most contact sports like football, hockey, baseball, and they serve the purpose of protecting like the outside of the head, but when you're getting hit, it's not the outside of your head that's really causing the CTE, it's within your brain, and for obvious reasons, you can't put a helmet within your skull. So your brain is still vulnerable to hitting against the skull and will still cause this tau to be released. And a prevention method I think is better but not flawless is the concussion protocol. So what this is if people think you have a concussion while on the playing field, they'll take you out and put you through a test. If you come out positive, you are taken out, and if you come out negative, you're allowed to come back in. But if you come out positive for having a concussion, then you are put through a rigorous test that can span over some time, and to make sure that you can't worsen this concussion. And these concussion protocols can vary from sport organizations to even Worcester Academy has their own individual concussion protocol. But the problem with this is it's more so damage control rather than anything else, as you'll have a concussion and that can still result in the tau eventually causing its side effects. And the best prevention method, in my opinion, is the knowledge of the disease. So my analogy of this is if you're on the Autobahn, which is a highway in Germany, and you have a fast car, you're not going to say, oh, I'm just going to go as fast as I can for the sake of it, because you have the common sense you might injure yourself or others around you. And how this relates to CTE and concussions is you're going to have the ability to hit people with your head in football, for instance, but if you know what you're doing to yourself or what you might be doing to others, you're not going to do that because you can seriously be worsening your life or the life of someone around you. Okay, how you're able to detect this. So PET scans and fluid-based biomarkers are both ways to detect CTE while the person is still alive. They both work by seeing the abnormal protein floating throughout the brain, which is a tau, and they'll mark it out. The effectiveness of this, though, is fairly limited, as you will have this tau protein, and similar to concussion protocol, it's basically damage control. It just lets you know you have to be careful in the future, and it's going to make you have to change maybe how you play sports, if you play sports at all. So, my relation of this project to honors biology. Hyperphosphorylation is how the tau protein releases from the axon and is able to therefore float through. Is the function of the tau protein to stabilize it is a part of a eukaryotic cell, which we went over previously this year. So, the importance of this project. I said this once and I'll say it again. Informing people is by far the best method of preventing CTE. It really comes down to common sense, and if you know what you can be doing to yourself or someone around you, you're gonna try and stop it because it's just really degrading someone's life or even your own, and in turn that will limit CTE. So, challenges I had with this project. Finding useful information was really difficult, especially with the tau protein, as it was a fairly complicated topic, and I didn't want to find something that'd be overcomplicated for someone who didn't have as much information on the topic, such as you. And presenting, I'm not too big on public speaking, but here we are. And things I found helpful are planning, which in turn resulted in efficiency, which helped me to complete this project on time. And my sources. Thank you. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, what is the Worcester Academy concussion protocol?
So, I believe you have at least, as soon as you get this concussion, I'm pretty sure it's 1 day off of all classes, and then you're slowly brought back into classes. But before you can come back to actual playing like sports, I believe it's like you have to get through 5 days with no symptoms of a concussion, which can take some time, as it's pretty hard to recover from it. And then from there on, I'm pretty sure it's up to the sports team to slowly bring you back into it. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
And I have some like papers here that describe the symptoms and how you can prevent it. And if you want to take some, I'll leave them here. Actually, I'll just pass it out, I guess. Gonna get them one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it's 2%.
And I don't have it available for you.
Oh, okay. I think we have enough battery, I hope.
I'll help.
Oh, it's 7 now.
Whoops. Is that headphones?
Oh, yeah. Headphone. Yeah. Can we share with you right now? So then, if we don't have battery, we can use our computer. I didn't notice that. I guess this is it. Hi everyone, I'm Giselle and she's Jasmine. Today we are going to introduce our project of depression. Depression is a mental health disorder and characterized by persistently low mood, loss of energy in activity, and causing significant impairment in daily life. It is a very common disease. There are over 300 million people cases per year in the whole world, and over 800,000 people committed suicide because of depression every year. However, it is a treatable disease with the help from mental health professionals. And here is a video we found to introduce more about depression, and we'll play the first minute of it. Okay, so 1 second. There's an advertisement, so just sorry about that. Okay, skip ad. Is your voice?
In the United States, close to 10% of adults struggle with depression. But because it's a mental illness, it can be a lot harder to understand than, say, high cholesterol.
Sorry.
One major source of confusion is the difference between having depression and just feeling depressed. Almost everyone feels down from time to time. Getting a bad grade, losing a job, having an argument, even a rainy day can bring on feelings of sadness. Sometimes there's no trigger at all. It just pops up out of the blue. Then circumstances change, and those sad feelings disappear. Clinical depression is different. It's a medical disorder, and it won't go away just...
Okay, so sorry. Okay, that was a brief introduction of depression right there. And so why we chose depression? We chose this topic because we both knew a friend we had who suffered from depression, and we literally witnessed how this person gone through this process with a lot of pain. But then at that time, we didn't really have any experience on how to help people with depression, and so we feel really bad for that. So by using this chance right here, we chose to do depression and research on it in order to help more people in the future if we ever meet other people who suffer from this illness. And before we do any research on the topic, we schedule an interview with Ms. Tifnan, who is a counselor in Worcester Academy. So then we get to know more about depression first. The first question we asked was the number of students in Worcester Academy that went to her each year. And the answer was really surprising. Over half of the ongoing student body actually went to her throughout the whole year. And she also provided us statistic from last year. So about 166 students last year went to her, and a third of these students went specifically for depression. And the next question we asked was if the disease is treatable. And we got an answer saying yes. And it is totally treatable, but it will occur after time pass if anything happened to the person. And in order to know more about depression, we also asked what are some more serious symptoms that people experience, and we divide they can be two categories. One of them is mental sides, and one of them is the physical sides. Mental can be isolate of oneself or feeling bad for themselves, and the physical sides can be having sleeping disorders or feeling anxious all the time. And Ms. Tifnan also mentioned it is a progression instead of happening just at once, like the symptoms progress during time. And in order to do some more research, we asked what are some other information she can give us to do the project. And she provided us some topics saying CBT treatment and medication treatment will be some really good things to research on. So we will talk about that later on in the presentation. Yeah. And after interviewing Ms. Tifna, we started our research. So statistic, do you know over 20% of all teens on the world experience depression before their adulthood, so before they turn to 18, before they actually know like things. And it is really surprising. Only 30% of these infected teens get proper treatment for depression, which is a really low number if you ask me. Yeah. And so symptoms.
So depression symptom can divide it into two categories, mental symptom and physical symptom. Mental symptom can have a lot of different types. Such as feeling sad, restless, hopeless without any reason, lost interest in the thing you normally like. For example, lost appetite, sleeping disturbance such as drowsiness and insomnia. Sleeping too much or too less are both the symptom of depression. And also having trouble to concentrate, to think, or to remember things, prolonged tiredness. That might cause you to think less and feel less. And I think it can be the direct cause of lost interest because you don't have enough energy to support your daily activity. And also the mood regulation ability of the people who is depression decline obviously. They overreact to the negative emotion but have no reaction to positive emotion. So the people with neuroticism are more likely to have depression. Depression can also cause the changing brain, can cause the changing physical, such as the changing brain, and that can be detected by X-ray. The change includes smaller frontal lobes, abnormal transmission, depleted neurotransmitter, and hormone abnormality. Also, the physical pain is one of the physical symptoms, such as back pain and headache. A side effect also come with depression. So people with depression are more likely to experience the problem related to alcohol abuse because they think alcohol can help them to drown their sorrow. So depression is also a factor for suicide.
So for causes of depression, there's actually no single cause for depression, meaning there's a lot of factors that contribute to the disease. And we divide the causes into two sides. The first one is psychological. So the major factor of psychological cause is a person's personality. So if a person has a personality that tends to worry a lot, have self-esteem, or is just sensitive to criticism, all these negative part of the personality can really lead to depression, the disease. And the other sides of the cause is physical sides. So there are more factors in this sides of causes. So the most common one is just environment. It is a really important one. So having and being in a bad environment can affect a person really hardly and causing them to have depression. And family causes and illness can be some other contribution to depression, in which family can also be one factor in environment, and also dealing with chronic illness can be a really painful process in which it will also develop into depression.
Okay. And there's an interesting fact about more female patients. The number of female patients are 3 times more than the males. It related to a lot of aspects. For example, economic level. The research shows that the female's average income is lower than the male, and the people with a lower economic level are more likely to get depression. And also in a lot of community, females are considered to have lower social status, so the self-concept and self-esteem difference can also be the cause of depression.
Yeah. So the biology sides of the project, so the connection with biology. We found this connection of genetics in depression in this topic, in which genetic variants, if only one genetic variant actually doesn't really affect a person in which they don't suffer from depression. However, several genetic variants adding on together, including bad environment, can really develop a person into depression and all these bad illnesses. And another interesting fact that we found was the twin study. So this has always been a study in history, and scientists found that there is 40% to 50% more probability in twins to develop depression in both individuals. So they are more likely to develop into depression, which is really surprising. And family study also shows that there is a higher, if a person has depression, there is a higher probability in first degree relatives to develop into depression as well. So yeah, that's some biological sides. And related diseases for depression, we also divided them into 2 parts, which is mental side and physical sides. And the mental sides include anxiety disorders, panic disorders, schizophrenia. It's right there because I don't know how to pronounce it. So here you go. It's right there. It's that. And the last one is obsessive compulsive disorder, which are all these negative things that can happen to one person. And the physical sides include anorexia, eating disorder, substance abuse, social phobia, all these things that can happen in one daily life, those negative effects. And different types of depression. Different types of depression. There's 3 kinds of major depression. The first one is major depression. It is a kind of depression that interfere with one's activity in every single day, with the related disease I just talked about. And however, there's one patient will only suffer one episode in their lifetime in which they will suffer one time of major depression in their lifetime only. However, there's another more serious kind of depression called psychotic depression, in which this depression is way more involves more psychological ideas, And this kind of depression can also lead a patient into suicidal thoughts, all this, or hurting oneself and stuff. And there's also one special one called seasonal affective disorder. This is a really special one. This kind of depression, it's like a person gets depression during the winter, but then during summer and spring, when the weather is good, when everything is good, flower blossom, the patient just cure by itself, and then there's no depression anymore. So I don't know. I just found that interesting. and
there are a lot of celebrities suffer from depression. For example, Van Gogh combated with depression for a long time and ended up his life with shooting himself. And there are some other examples.
And so we also research some treatments that we think will be helpful for curing depression.
Although depression is a very serious disease, there are a lot of different treatment for it. First, in order to have more effective treatment, the patient should learn more about depression. And although medication work very well on the disease, it is not suitable for long-term use. Excessively relying on depression will cause a lot of side effects, and I will talk about it later. So I think the most suitable treatment should be psychological treatment. If it doesn't work for some severe cases, the best way should be combine both medical treatment and psychological treatment. Psychological treatment can include CBT, as known as cognitive behavioral therapy. Talking to the counselor about your disease and get feedback and advice from the counselor. During the treatment, therapy will help you to identify your negative thought and replace this thought with more healthier and more realistic one. The change in your thought will cause a change in your behavior, and that can help to relieve your depression. However, psychological treatment are not suitable for some severe cases. The most common medical treatment is antidepressant. Antidepressant help to balance the chemical in your brain called neurotransmitter, which control your mood and your emotion. It helps with your mood, your sleep, and increase appetite and concentration. Although it has a lot of side effects, includes anxiety, dizziness, sweating, and so on. Medical treatment can help you to relieve the symptom of depression, but it can help to change your personality or make you feel better all the time. Depression is a typical complex disease. From gene to environment, the causes are interlocking and have mutual effects. Why people get depression? Because we are human with complex psychology. We create this complex world and we live in it. So the world is not perfect, so we get depression. Every individual with depression might have different weak points, but they are same in some ways. They need our help. If your friend or family tell you, "I think I'm depressed," please don't think they are dramatic. They need our helps.
Okay, so overall, the presentation, which it was really fun. We got to interview a teacher. We got to work together. We got to research on internet. It was really fun. But there was this one challenge that we had in which there was too many information on the internet about depression, which made our project into a really long, boring process. And so during rehearsal, it was really boring. It took up like 20 minutes or something. It was really boring. It was not good. So then it was really hard for us to eliminate some not so important information on the presentation. So then it takes lesser time and it's more interesting to present them. But overall, it was fun, and the challenge wasn't really that big, but yeah, it was pretty good. So that was the ending of our presentation. Here's some citation, and that's it. Thank you. Anyone has question about the topic?
I do. Two questions, as a matter of fact.
That's all. Okay.
You talked a lot about cognitive behavioral therapy,
Yes.
and that came up a couple of times.
Mhm.
What is that?
So
Could you give an example?
yeah. So basically, it's a therapist that they target the bad ideas in your brain or like what you're thinking, and they try to talk to you and then try to make you kind of change the idea into something good. So, for example, if you think, oh, I might get a really bad grade on this, and then I'm like really nervous because I feel like I'm gonna fail it. And so you go to a therapist, they'll be like, okay, you're thinking about this. So why not you go and think, what should I do to not fail this test? And basically the therapist will just try to change your opinion and then, or maybe give you a way to really solve this worry so then it doesn't get bigger and bigger and then develop into depression. Yeah.
As a follow-up to that,
我打。
I know sometimes now mindfulness is a big
Mhm.
type of solution or therapy. How does that all fit in?
So mindfulness is something, I'll say it's also a cure for depression, and it's a process in which one individual just sit there and start to think about themselves and then think about everything. But I think mindfulness can really help when you actually think about what you're thinking, like think about what you're doing and everything, and then try to think of a way going out of depression. And then yeah, it's also, we actually found information on the internet about mindfulness. It's also one of the treatment for depression, and yeah, it's really, I'll say it's really helpful in which people think about themselves and then be, why am I depressed, or what should I do? It's like CBT as well. What should I do to improve myself to not get depressed and stuff? So yeah.
Last question. You mentioned at the end that there's a lot of different causes for depression, from genes to environment. Since we've gone over genetics, could you expand on some of the genetic aspects for the causes? Had you come across any particular type of genes that might contribute to phenotype of depression?
Actually, we didn't do the research of the specific gene, but we think the gene will infect depression. For example, if your parents or family has depression history, so their offsprings are more likely to get depressed. Yeah, and I think that's it.
So is it a combination of genes in an environment, or one or the other?
And I think both gene and environment will infect this disease. For example, in environment, like for example, if you when you were little, if your family, your parents might beat you or criticize you often, so the children will more likely to get depression. Yeah, I think that's it.
So you started the project because one of your friends had depression, and I was interested about the counselor saying a third of children who went to visit were there for depression, so that's roughly 50 children So how do you think the school and the student body is addressing this situation here? Did you take a look at that and
I didn't ask the counselor about this, like this specific question, but me inside in this community, I feel like the student body and the school didn't really notice this fact. They didn't really take care of the student that are suffering from depression, and because in our school, like during class, no one really talked about this topic, so it's just really hard for people to help these students if everyone else is not talking about it. So in mind, we decide to do this presentation, this project, and then be like, hey, there's this project, this problem in the school, and so we hope to help them more and then let people know what is happening in our school. So yeah.
So how will you bring this then to the much larger WA community? And this is a small audience right here.
Yeah. I guess this is a hard question. I guess maybe I'll tell people, like in everyday conversation I'll be like, hey, there's this problem in this school, and then I guess I'll make this presentation smaller.
Educating the community.
Yeah.
And this would be a perfect way to collaborate with the pillars.
Mhm. I might reach out to them or something.
you could affect the environment here at Worcester Academy with your project,
Yeah.
with your passion?
Mhm.
Because I think you've done a nice job.
Thank you. Yeah, so that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Violet, you ready?
吓死我了！这个问题怎么这么多？我不知道他问我的问题，我都懵逼了。是的，吓死我了。
Do I have to turn this off or anything? Where should I put it? Where's the music?
What?
Because the music is not on. How can I?
Should be on now. Yeah, that's it. Try it now.
No. Oh, yeah.
You got it.
I just need to put it. Oh. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Violet Zhang and I'm a student of WA. So I want to begin my presentation with two questions. How many of you play instrument? Raise your hand if you do so. How many of you think that music is really an important part of your life? Well, most of you do and I do too. So my project is about music and mood. The reason why I chose this project because I personally love music, and when I listen to different kinds of music, my mood changed. I want to explore how the brain functions differently while different music go into our brain. I saw Annalise listening to music while doing her project, and I asked her how she feels while doing that. She said that listening to music might make her less concentrate on her project, but it just feels good. It just feels relaxed. Here's an interview.
Do you listen to music really often? Yes. Which kind of music is your favorite? I think hip hop might be my favorite type. If you're doing homework, do you prefer listening to music? If so, why? I will prefer to listen to music because it will make me more productive and maybe more relaxed. How do you feel while listening to your favorite music? Excited, and if I listen to it, it will make me feel more comfortable. Do you listen to music really often? Yeah. Which kind of music is your favorite? I enjoy all kinds of music, so there's no favorite one. If you're doing homework, do you prefer listening to music or if so, what? Absolutely, because if there's no music, I can do my homework. I'm all. How do you feel while listening to your favorite song? I feel like I'm the most famous singer in the world.
Now the question comes. Why do you feel relaxed while listening to the music? Being in a good mood can make us more likely to seek new experiences, be creative, plan ahead, procreate, and be adapt to new conditions. The limbic system is a primordial brain network underpinning mood. Neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine act as chemical messengers to sex signals to the brain. They can increase happiness for your body. When the brain receives these signals, recognizing the objects and situations, assigning an emotional value to behavior, and make split-second risk or reward assessments. The limbic system sits under the cerebrum, the biggest and nearest part of your brain, and is made of structures such as hypothalamus, hippocampus, and amygdala. The almond-shaped amygdala acts as a really important part of your brain because it can relate to events and memory part of your brain. Your brain can synchronize the neural oscillators and can predict when the next drum beat will occur. The music is also related to immunoglobulin A, which is linked to the immunity and can increase the ability for us to kill germs and bacteria. There's a study reviewed. The scientists studied patients who will undergo surgery. Participants were randomly assigned whether to listen to music or take anti-anxiety drugs. The scientists tracked the rating of their anxiety as well as the level of their stress hormone cortisol. The result turns out that patients who listen to music has less anxiety and lower cortisol than people who took drugs. This certainly shows that music is a powerful medicine. Hearts and brains are connected together, and the reason why music feels good is because of dopamine. Dopamine is the same substance that puts thrill in sex, puts thrill in some illegal drugs, and the warm feeling of woman breastfeeding her child. The dopamine is synthesized out of amino acids and transmits signals through neurons to neurons through the circuits of your brain. The stratum has two parts, the dorsal, the upper one, and the ventral, the lower one. Another part in your brain called superior temporal gyrus involved intimately with the experience of your music, and its connection with the nucleus accumbens is really important. Different people listening to same music hearing different things. There are many different kinds of music, and people tend to prefer sad music when they are experiencing interpersonal loss, for example, like the end of a relationship. A solo cello paired with a basso might be one of the saddest sounds in the world. For intense action, you can try some trombones and trumpets, and they can play brightly. For a mystery song, you can try some low winds with strings. If you're experiencing a romantic environment, you can try some piano or flute or strings. Upbeat music is really a good choice for you in the morning because it can awaken your brain, so maybe try some upbeat music for your alarm clock. If you want to decrease the anxiety like before test or like me before the presentation, you can listen to some soothing music as I did 10 minutes ago. Emotional message in different age. For infants, they prefer positive music to negative music. Also, mother singing can increase their ability to decode the message of emotions. For elementary age students, they cannot distinguish angry or afraid music yet, but they still prefer positive faces. The studies show that the advancing age has nothing to do with decoding the message of negatively in the music. The only thing that the advancing age do is to decode the happy music. There are many advantages of music. For example, music can enhance strong emotions, and strong emotions can lead to strong memories, which means that music is a really good way to form memory. A study showed that if you are listening to a piece of music from someone's past, you can evoke your own memory from that past. For example, if you listen to some pop music from 1980s, maybe you can try to memory something. Your music can improve your mood, decrease your anxiety, and also improve the exercises. Music therapy uses music to help people with social issues. And it can affect their heart rate and their breathing, and also improve the promotion of endorphins or natural painkillers. Some interesting facts about music. Few activities that can synthesize your whole brain, and music is one of them. If you play music frequently, you can change your brain structure physically. Your heartbeat can mimic the beat of the music, so maybe try to count the beat for your background music, and you cannot do that at all. Some changes during the research. At first, I want to do how different instruments can affect our mood, but actually I didn't find many evidence about that, so as I am interested in all music, I just changed my topic into music and mood. Summary for my presentation. So in this presentation, I talked about how brain function while music going to our brain, how different kinds of music can reach different mood goals, how different ages can interpret music differently, and some advantages and interesting facts about music. So that's the end of my presentation, and I hope that my presentation can answer some of your curiosities. The end. Any questions? Can I go now? Because Dr. C is not here. Is he coming now? Yeah. Okay, I'll wait for him. No, I end my presentation. Can I go now? Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Does this go on?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Finkelberg. I've chosen to do my 20% project on Alzheimer's disease. I've always been fascinated by the brain and memory. Recently, a family member of mine was diagnosed with the Alzheimer's disease, and this topic became much more personal to me. Alzheimer's disease is not yet curable. However, there are ways to prevent the risks of developing this disease. This is why I believe it is worth 15 minutes of your time. As of now, we know a lot about the brain anatomy, less about the brain function, and even less about the Alzheimer's disease. During my presentation, I'd like to only touch upon 3 key topics: the brain, memory, and Alzheimer's disease. The first region of the brain which I'd like to talk about is the amygdala. The amygdala is located in the temporal lobe and controls the fear and fight or flight reflexes. The next region of the brain which I'd like to talk about is the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with decision-making and good or bad judgment of situations. Us teenagers are famous for not having fully developed prefrontal cortexes. Therefore, I believe we shouldn't be held accountable for our poor decision-making. Accordingly, the prefrontal cortex holds both short and long-term memories and controls the amygdala. Lastly, the hippocampus is a region of the brain associated with mental growth. It also affects one's moods, and it stores new memories. It's located right here. Patients with Alzheimer's experience destruction in their hippocampus and amygdala, which impairs their fear and fight or flight reflexes and their new memories as well. In 1953, a unique opportunity to understand the way that the hippocampus works arose. A man by the name of Henry Molaison of Connecticut suffered from severe epilepsy, and doctors removed his hippocampus to treat this epilepsy. His epilepsy was indeed treated, but in turn, he lost all of his new memories, similar to patients with Alzheimer's disease. Simply put, there are 2 key types of memories: short-term and long-term. Short-term memory holds small snippets of information. So perhaps if someone were to give you their phone number, before you could input it into your phone, you would hold on to it in your short-term memory. Or if a waiter were to memorize your order without writing anything down. Long-term memory can be split into 4 key sections. Implicit memory, which is one's general knowledge, unconsciously remembered, so perhaps chewing. And episodic memory is episodes of your life, so a wedding or a graduation. The final 2 types of memories are semantic and procedural. Semantic memory is general knowledge of the world, consciously remembered, so perhaps how to ride a bike. And procedural memory is simply your motor skills, so how to crawl or how to write. Patients with Alzheimer's first experience loss of short-term memory, and as the disease progresses, their long-term memory gets affected. Neurons are the building blocks of the nervous system. They generate and transmit signals from the brain to certain organs and systems. Neurons can be split into 4 key sections. The axons, located right here, which are the senders of the signals. Dendrites, located here, which are the receiver of the signals. The cell body, which is the holder of DNA and cytoplasm, located near the dendrites. And finally, the myelin sheath, which is a protective layer which speeds up the signal towards the axon. Synapses are teeny gaps between 2 neurons, which chemical signals end up traversing. Patients with Alzheimer's experience issues with their neurons. They're either harmed or die, and their synapses end up getting clogged as well. There are 2 key types of signals in the brain: electrical signals, or action potentials, which initiate reactions, and chemical signals, which traverse synapses, also known as neurotransmitters. Although there's extensive research being done about Alzheimer's, there is very little actually known about the disease. All of the information we currently have is still in the form of a hypothesis. I'd like to talk about two key hypotheses, the first one being the amyloid beta one. This hypothesis states that the accumulation of the amyloid beta protein disrupts the neuronal function. This amyloid beta protein is a misfolded protein which is sticky and built up in plaques between nerves. This doesn't allow for neurotransmitters to pass, similar to cholesterol building up in one's blood vessels. The second key hypothesis, which I'd like to talk about, is the tau hypothesis. Tau usually maintains the structure of a neuron and is commonly found in the axon. But in patients with Alzheimer's, the tau ends up receding back into the cell body and clumping into neurofibrillary tangles. This twisted tau causes for the brain cells to die and doesn't allow for information to flow effectively. As of now, there aren't any effective treatments of Alzheimer's disease. A common neurotransmitter by the name of acetylcholine becomes important when looking at the treatments offered currently of the Alzheimer's disease. Cholinesterase inhibitor is a type of medication which retains the signal by slowing down the deterioration of neurotransmitters. And this is the most common type of medication currently offered. Acetylcholinesterase is an enzyme which changes the structure of neurotransmitters, specifically acetylcholine, which ends up terminating the signal. A cholinesterase inhibitor, or the most common medication currently offered, Aricept, is indeed a cholinesterase inhibitor. And it works by increasing the amount of acetylcholine, the key neurotransmitter, and decreasing the amount of the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, which allows for the signal to be retained for a longer period of time. As of now, current treatments only decrease the symptoms of the Alzheimer's disease. There is nothing currently offered which prevents the progression or cures the disease as a whole. And this is precisely what treatments of the future are looking into doing. As aforementioned, the Alzheimer's disease is not curable and there aren't any effective treatments yet. And this is why prevention becomes so important. Diet is extremely important to decreasing the risks of developing Alzheimer's disease. Being sugar-free, eating very specific fatty acids, such as omega-3, which is commonly found in fish, maintaining a Mediterranean diet filled with fruits and veggies, and having plenty of antioxidants, such as berries and tea, can all help with the prevention or decreasing the risks of Alzheimer's. Sleep also is extremely, extremely important because it flushes the brain of the amyloid B protein, which is the lead cause of Alzheimer's. So napping regularly, sleeping for at least 8 hours a night, and having a consistent sleep schedule are all ways to decrease the risks of developing Alzheimer's disease. Exercising both moderately and consistently, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, can also decrease the risks of developing Alzheimer's. Finally, not smoking, drinking 1 to 2 glasses of red wine, obviously if your age permits, and controlling one's weight, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels all can help decrease the risks of preventing or decrease the risks of Alzheimer's. Just to summarize, Alzheimer's disease is very common. Currently, 10% of the population over the age of 65 has the Alzheimer's disease. To put this into a numerical value, approximately 5.5 million people are affected. There are currently no effective treatments of the disease. Once again, prevention becomes of the utmost importance. I think overall I conducted thorough literary analysis, which was detailed. I think something that my project was lacking was original research. Thank you very much for listening. Are there any questions? No? Thank you.
Should I just start? Okay. Hi, I'm Allie Athanas, a freshman at Worcester Academy, and I will be presenting my 20% project on the study of acne and sensitive skin. For my project, I'm creating a theoretical face wash to help prevent and remove acne. So first, let's go over the basics. Dermatology is actually directly translated to the study of skin, derm meaning skin and atology meaning the study of. Dermatologists are people who try to prevent skin diseases along with trying to keep your skin protected from the harmful rays of the sun. Acne. So acne is caused from many things, such as hormones, hereditary reasons, or the most common reasons of clogged pores. Here's a little video to show what is acne.
The pilosebaceous unit, or PSU, of the skin consists of the sebaceous gland and the hair follicle. The sebaceous gland secretes an oily substance called sebum, which protects the hair and skin. Overproduction of sebum is related to the disease called acne, or commonly pimples. Sebum may collect excessively as a result of poor hygiene, genetic predisposition, or accelerated glandular activity, especially during adolescence. During an acne breakout, the pore of the hair follicle is plugged by a mixture of sebum and cells that line the hair follicle. The trapped sebum allows bacteria to grow in the plugged follicles. This forms the primary acne lesion called a comedo. There are two types of comedo, whiteheads and blackheads. When the sebum and bacteria stay below the skin surface, a whitehead is formed. A blackhead occurs when the trapped sebum and bacteria partially open to the surface and turn black due to melanin, the skin's pigment. Commonly involved areas are the face, neck, chest, shoulders, and upper back. Treatment includes keratolytics, retinoids, antibiotics, hormone therapy, spironolactone for women, isoretinoid in severe cases.
Oh boy. Okay, so as said in the video, your skin has pores, which are tiny hair follicles on your face. The pores, or more specifically sebaceous glands, create sebum, and too much sebum can result in clogged pores, which can ultimately cause acne. Sensitive skin. When I was creating my theoretical face wash, I had to bring into the factor of sensitive skin. Having sensitive skin means to have skin that is breakout prone and is easily affected by the sun. These factors are important when making a face wash because you would need to find products that protect from the sun and prevent breakouts. 60,234,009 people. That's the number of Americans who have acne. Yes, I know that does sound like a very high number. That means that 1 in 3 Americans struggle with acne. Once I heard this number, I realized I had to try to create something to fix it. However, the real reason I chose this as my 20% project was because personally I hate acne, and I realized other people must hate it too. Since I'm not physically making a product, I thought that this project could inform people what to look for in a face wash. I also wanted to inform people what my theoretical face wash would include. If I were to make the face wash, this is the step where I would gather all my ingredients that protect the skin and prevent acne. The goal of my project. The two major factors in my theoretical face wash is that I want it to be effective yet affordable. I hope this face wash will clear up people's skin and protect their skin. I also hope this face wash will help people save money and not spend hundreds of dollars on products that don't even end up working. My face wash would have 9 products in it, each one to benefit their skin in different ways. Salicylic acid, tea tree oil, and benzoyl peroxide all would help to prevent and remove acne. My face wash would also include SPF 15, which would help prevent unnecessary sun exposure. My face wash would also include glycerin, which would help add moisture back into the skin. I would also include micellar water to help remove excess dirt and makeup from the skin. In my face wash, I would also include almond oil because it's more natural than other oils, moisturizing, and provides the skin with vitamins E, A, and B. Shea butter would also be included in my face wash because it would allow for the skin to have a smooth complexion. And lastly, oatmeal. Yes, it does sound weird, but it's actually used for a great scrub to get the dead skin off your face. Benefits. There are actually many benefits to my theoretical face wash, including it would minimize the amount of acne, strengthening and protecting be easy to use. All you would have to do is step 1, wet your face, 2, apply the face wash and scrub your face, and then 3, rinse it off. Your skin should eventually start to see improvements after around 2 weeks once your skin gets used to all of the new products on your skin. The community. My face wash can greatly impact the community by allowing people to leave their house feeling the best they can be. This face wash could also leave the people of the community feeling positive, confidence, high self-esteem, self-assurance, courage, and bold. Biology connection. This project can connect to biology in many ways. For example, skin. Skin is the largest organ in the body, which closely ties back to biology. Also, hereditary factors can cause acne, which involves genetics, and genetics and biology are also really closely tied together. Lastly, this project can tie to biology because some types of acne can have a role in immune system regulation. Some acne are used as ways to regulate and respond to infection by using the inflammatory response. Reflection. Okay, so my theoretical face wash is hopefully effective and affordable. Some challenges were actually getting up here and presenting and finding my research because sometimes I would dig too deep into information that I didn't need to go into deep into. And if I were to actually make the product, the funding would be very difficult to find all the money to buy it. What worked? All of the products I picked will benefit people's skins. What? Conclusively, I hope this project informs people about acne, informs people about what to look for in their next face wash. Thanks. Any questions?
So, with this, would you need to change different components to help different types of people who might have different complexions or different issues?
Yes, because some people might not have as bad acne as others. So if someone has worse acne, then they might need more of the tea tree oil in the face wash or the benzoyl peroxide or the salicylic acid. But if other people have really dry skin, then they might need more glycerin or shea butter in the face wash. Yes, Ron.
You mentioned that in the video, it mentioned that acne can be found in other places in the body. Could you use your treatment in other areas as well, or just the face?
Well, originally I was creating it just for the face, but I could maybe come up with something for the body too, using similar products.
So, last question. If I recall, acne is when bacteria get in under and close to the hairs on the face or
Mm-hmm.
on the skin. What component could you point out to that might end up helping to seal off those areas that bacteria could gain entrance to, which ultimately would cause acne?
I would say the salicylic acid would help prevent the acne the best. I mean, like, are you asking like what would ultimately like?
Well, how would you prevent the bacteria from getting into those areas? Do you want to kill all of the bacteria on the skin?
Yes.
Why?
Because that way the person who uses the face wash won't have to worry about the acne forming, so it can prevent it right from the start.
Would the bacteria have some sort of it's there anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would it have a protective effect?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, so for instance, in genetics, we talked about how a mutant or a mutated allele can have a beneficial effect.
Mm-hmm.
Would bacteria normally on the skin have a beneficial effect?
I would have to do further research to answer your question.
Thank you very much.